I'm Dani Fallon. You might also know me as Embracing Obsession. I'm a published author, a painter, and a general creative entrepreneur. So. I have not been on a first date in a long time, but I think I would have always liked to ask if they had struggled with mental health, and if anybody that they loved and cared for also struggled with mental health, and what that looks like to them, and how they've coped and processed it, because I think that says a lot about somebody. If they've experienced it themselves, or if they have had to watch other people experience it and figure out the best way to help them, it speaks a lot to their character, I think. It might seem ridiculous, but I think I experience and live with obsessive compulsive disorder, and I would have loved to have shared that on a first date, because it is, I don't want to necessarily say intrinsic to who I am, but it has definitely shaped who I am. And in order to understand how I process things, how I relate to myself and to the world, I think it does become a larger component on how I see myself and how I think other people see me. And I think it just would have been like a much more telling experience, or at least a more honest one. I didn't realize that I lived with, technically I've lived with obsessive compulsive disorder my entire life. I don't necessarily have the compulsion aspect of this. It's mainly mental compulsions. So a lot of reassurance, a lot of extremely terrible self-talk that nobody would ever really see. And it's kind of funny, like the way that it affects my relationships is that I don't talk about it. So things will build up and build up and build up, and I will have this like completely warped reality of what is actually happening. And then when I talk to them, because I'm not really a fighter, like I don't really yell at people, but when it boils up to the point where I'm like, well, you think this about me, they're like, what are you talking about? Like, that is nowhere near what I meant or what I thought. And I have to backtrack and be like, okay, so then what actually is reality? Because obviously my brain is like unsure of what is truth and what I perceive to be. It's kind of funny, me and my current boyfriend of like 4 years, we have named my OCD, and we call him Jeff. And we figured out that was the best way for us to realize what is me and what is not me. So I'll be able to just text him and be like, Jeff's here today. And he's like, do you want me to punch him? Yeah, so it does affect relationships, and even outside of romantic relationships, it affects friendships, and in the same capacity, just being unsure. It's a lot of uncertainty. It's a lot of uncertainty. It's funny because, especially with the OCD that I experience, I actually have to tell him, and even my friends, to like not reassure me, which is so counterintuitive for them, because they just want to keep telling me, no, everything's okay. But I have to reach a point where I can tell myself everything's okay. And that is the like rub. It's he, or even my friends or my parents, they want to just be like, everything's good. And I have to be like, you can't, you have to just, if I say, I feel like I was awkward at that party, or this conversation was weird, or I'm pretty sure you're mad at me. A lot of times I'll be like, just say maybe. And I have to sit with that. And even thinking about it is so super uncomfy. But it's the best way to support someone in my position, which is hard. It's hard for the loved one, and it's hard for me because we have to be on the same page about what I really actually need. Yeah.
Because it changes depending on the situation.
Yeah. Yeah, because sometimes reassurance is needed when it isn't about Jeff. But I think it becomes, the more you expose the differences, the more we both see where it's me needing the reassurance and where it's Jeff trying to take over my brain. And that is probably one of the healthier ways to support me. Yeah.
No, definitely. And just being able to figure out the differences between those two situations.
Yeah, and it takes a long time. Yeah, it takes a long time because it's about me being aware and then trying to explain that to my loved ones. Yeah. So it wasn't a first date, but it was, I had briefly dated this one person who, in retrospect, was definitely dealing with a lot of mental struggles. You could call it a rebound. But there was this one particular date night where we went out to dinner. It was great. It was sushi and sake, and we got in the car, and the first thing he said was, "Why were you looking at the waiter like that?" He was like, "Do you want to go date him?" And I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, that's ridiculous." And he was like, "I saw you looking at him. Like, it's okay, but like you were definitely looking at him." And I was like, "I don't even remember what ethnicity that waiter was. Like, I don't know anything about this person." And he wouldn't let up about it. And that was like the first indication of like, all right, I should probably be taking a step back from this situation, so. So actually, currently, my favorite types of dates are, this is so silly, but I've like bought this thing called Adventure Challenge. And it's just like a book filled with random dates. And me and my current partner have to just scratch off and just do whatever the book tells us to do. And they're all really creative and spontaneous. And I think my favorite one was that we had to go to a local record store and pick a record off of just the record imagery, like just the cover imagery. And my partner's a musician, so this was a test for him as well, because he doesn't want to buy something that's just not worth having. But so we picked one, and then we had to like learn all about the artist, and it was really cool. We got to listen to some really weird music that we never would have before, and so things like that, like where you do things that you just wouldn't normally do. Yeah, I think it encourages us to be more spontaneous on our own, and that just leads to, I don't know, to just better connection, because then it forces you to have conversations you wouldn't have if you just went to this, your favorite restaurant, had dinner, and, But anyway, my favorite color is green.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh.